show your chin. I've got the same thing here.
I should have brought a couple of external cams. You can put one right where you like.
Or get one of those owls for the here. That would really nicely be nice. Yeah.
I am going to get an owl. I've asked for it, but it takes a while. Yeah, we just got this table.
Oh, nice.
So it's got a hole cut for the owl because it used to have an owl on it. Got rid of the table, but not the owl. You know the owl cameras?
Yeah.
Yeah, those are great. Those are great. So, hello, folks. We've got kind of showing on Zoom, and we're in the Applied Computational Intelligence Lab. This is a Cummer Institute Center for AI and Autonomous Systems Seminar. And it is my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker. Mario Aguilar-Simon is a technical fellow at Teledyne Scientific Company, Intelligent Systems Laboratory. He has been working in AI and machine learning for over 3 decades. It's hard for me to believe that I met him, I think, maybe when we were both grad students at run by Steve Grossberg at the Center for Adaptive Systems, where he got his PhD in cognitive and neural systems before. Mario has been in various roles in industry since then. He's also worked at MIT and other academic positions, and he has he's been principal investigator on a lot of large and influential projects. He's responsible for AI strategy across the spectrum of offerings of Teledyne, which is one of the nation's largest defense contractors. He was PI on a couple of large DARPA programs, including the DARPA L2M program that we participated in with him, and he's also become very knowledgeable in the work that they do as a result of their acquisition a few years ago of FLIR, so the nation's leading infrared camera company. So there's a lot of synergies there, and it's a real pleasure to have Mario here. We've known him, in addition to me knowing him for decades, several of my students have known him for a long time as well, for not decades, but a few years as well. So welcome, Mario. Thank you for coming to us, and we're very excited to hear your seminar.
Thank you. Thank you. So hello, everyone on the phone or on Zoom, and hello, folks here in the room. I do want to make this presentation pretty relaxed, casual, and so I'm here to try to give you guys a feel for some of the work that we do at Teledyne, primarily to try to give you insights into how what you are doing now here may translate into jobs out there. So please feel free to interrupt, ask questions. My presentation is set up just to give you a one-slide overview of a given project. And so it's going to be a tour de force of different things that we've been doing. And so feel free to stop me and maybe ask questions to dive into anything that I'm presenting. While I didn't prepare slides for that deep dive, I'm happy to describe what we did. And same thing goes for the folks on Zoom. Please feel free to do that. So I'm blocking. Am I blocking my own slide? No, actually. So it's not blocked. Might be better if I... Oh, no, it doesn't block. Okay, good. All right. So the title of my talk is AI for Everywhere You Look. And I don't know if you guys have looked up the Teledyne website, but that's our slogan, everywhere you look. I don't know who came up with that. It's kind of clever once I show you some of the things that we do. But in reality, the group that I represent, the part of the company that I represent, is it's kind of in the back end of sensors. So the reason they call it everywhere you look is because Teledyne produces huge amounts of sensors and devices that collect data, raw data, to make measurements of different types. We have customers throughout the world. And what we are seeing now, there's a huge need to digest all that raw data because we're now inundated with sensors. And so one of our contributions is to provide the AI to do that data digestion, if you will. So so Teledyne is organized around 4 sectors or segments. I should start by saying that we, like Don said, that we are a huge company. So I think these numbers might be 2021, $26 billion revenue, and I'm pretty sure we're well over 14.5 K employees. We are all over Europe, Asia, Australia, Latin America, and North America. We're pretty much everywhere you look. The sectors have evolved through basically acquisitions. So Teledyne Technology started as a relatively small company in the 50s, developing turbines and all kinds of other technology. But they were probably a 3,000 employee organization. And so through the years, they've acquired a number of businesses. Instrumentation is, my face is not that working. Instrumentation is producing lots of devices such as oscilloscopes and protocol analyzers that basically they're used everywhere around the world. Perhaps you guys have some of, yeah. Although the Teledyne acquired the oscilloscope company maybe 7 years ago. So if you have anything older than that, it won't have the Teledyne branding on it. But air and water quality analyzers, even these Ocean Explorer on underwater unmanned vehicles, they're all being used to collect data, in this case, in the oceans, for climate and ocean health monitoring. Digital imaging is basically what you may see out of is the part of the organization that gets the most press. And I'll show you a few more examples later, but they do produce all of the thermal infrared cameras and machine vision cameras, drones, and as you will see, we also produce the cameras that are on the James Webb Telescope, right? So we are getting a lot of press because they're getting deployed in all these major endeavors. Aerospace and defense electronics, as it turns out, is actually by volume the largest part of our organization. This I can't point to it with my laser. So here, this box right here is what I call a white box. So it's the equivalent to a black box, but it's one that is constantly open for data gathering. So we put this in pretty much every aircraft around the world, and it's collecting data from all the sensors around the aircraft to monitor things like, obviously, engine conditions, but also air quality in the cabin, fuel efficiency, things like that. And so, as you can imagine, if this is running on every single, well, I don't know that I think it's about 90% of all aircraft around the world. It's a huge part of the company. And then engineered systems It's a part of the organization that manages very large government programs. They have programs that they manage for NASA. So for instance, we manage the International Space Station in terms of maintenance cycles. There's also sensor payloads on the International Space Station. So people can actually go and put their own sensors for experiments. We manage that as well. We ourselves have sensors on the International Space Station. So also pretty big part of the company. But as you probably are hearing me say, we are collecting data everywhere. And that's, again, why everywhere you look. Here are some examples of what we are enabling people to do with data. We have on that the International Space Station system, we have a hyperspectral sensor that is helping JPL measure mineral content across various regions in the world. We are measuring air quality in aircraft cabins. Let me just do a few here. We are developing the emergency braking system technology for next generation vehicles. And this example is showing you day and nighttime detection of pedestrians. We also had all the, I think 7 of the 8 cameras on the Mars rover. And just as a completely out of the box, other type of sensor, we also produce these devices to plug into to the PCI bus to monitor and analyze signals, primarily debugging for engineers to debug computer systems. So again, lots of data that we gather, but also solutions that we enable by producing these capabilities. Before I go into examples of how we exploit those sensors, this is a short story on the James Webb Telescope. You guys been monitoring that, so pretty exciting. So the James Webb Telescope has 4 cameras, and my logo, yeah, there we go. 3 of them were developed by us. Teledyne is provided the sensors for the NearCam, which is the one that's getting the most press. A lot of the images that you're seeing released by NASA are produced by this sensor. This is a really cool technology that allows us to do really broadband infrared imaging, and we can actually tune the sensor to be sensitive in the short wave or out to the long. Well, it's really mid wave. At 5 microns is still mid wave, but very broad spectrum we're able to capture. One of the things that is of value to them is because we have this single sensor that can be tuned. They were able to design the physical setup of the telescope in a way that instead of having multiple camera arrays, they just have multiple mirror configurations to support imaging across these various bands. And this is a really good example of an image that was taken with that sensor. So I probably have seen this. And basically the reason you're able to see through a lot of this dust is because you're now operating in these much larger wavelengths. So that's our contribution in terms of an imager. One thing that is pretty cool for us is that in addition to the imager itself, we also developed the chip that acquires and processes the imagery and basically preconditions the imagery to deal with a lot of the artifacts of capture process. And this is actually it is an ASIC that has an FPGA on it, and we actually implemented the software that runs on that FPGA. In fact, that chip runs one of the algorithms that I have a patent on to do image enhancement. So we as a company come together to continue to extend the value of the product that we are releasing to customers. And one of the ways in which we're now seeing that done is there's a limit to how much the hardware can do, and the software, or in this case AI, can come in to fill in those gaps.
For example, that sidecar, how is that also rat hardened and
Yeah.
and whatnot? And how much of the business then of the imaging is the development also of those interface boards? You do that for each one of the products, or just as required for each job?
As required, but now we have so much business with both NASA and the European Space Agency that we actually now have a whole division that's dedicated to do the space-based systems. So it is, in reality, the initial design of imagers and the ASICs is a common core, but then very quickly gets transitioned to space qualified design by that division.
Very cool. Thank you.
Okay, cool. So there's all these sensors that I'm hinting at, because I haven't really shown you very specific ones, but we have cameras and oscilloscopes, and we have LiDAR systems, we have sonar systems, but we also have a huge array of platforms, unmanned platforms, both aerial, the first layer that. So we have a bunch of aerial platforms. We have a bunch of ground platforms. These are actually not autonomous. The gimbals are becoming more autonomous, and so that's why they're in this chart. We have gimbals that hold both the cameras and now the processing to do the search and analysis of imagery, so that they basically are in automatic mode. They're scanning the horizon, for instance, if that's the task, or maybe they're scanning the sky, looking for things of interest, and they just send an alert to an operator. So an operator doesn't have to be sitting there watching the video, looking for maybe somebody, breaking into through the fence into your facility, or things like that. So we are now adding autonomy in that sense to gimbals. We also have ground vehicles. These are both autonomous and remotely operated. We have unmanned surface vehicles of different sizes for different missions. And then we also have the underwater vehicles, a huge array of them. And so we now also have the means of getting the sensors to new places beyond where a camera could be placed. We can fly them. We can drive them very deep into the ocean, and so we are beginning to see our portfolio of problems that we need to solve expanding very rapidly, and that's actually quite exciting, because we live as engineers. We live off of solving problems, right, and kind of putting together solutions to address those problems. And so this is part of the FLIR acquisition that Professor Wong mentioned that happened, I think it was mid-2021, so it's been 2 years. All of a sudden, all of these devices became part of our portfolio, and all the folks who sell these products hear what you see there at the bottom from their customers. They want information. They don't want raw data. It's just too time consuming to watch the video off of a drone. In fact, you get motion sick. I don't know if you guys have done. You've flown a drone and watched the video. You can actually, if you're flying it, you can kind of keep up with it because you know what it's going to do when you turn. But if you're not flying it, if you're just watching the video, you can actually get motion sick very quickly. So it's actually very difficult for people to fully take advantage of a drone that is, and of course, it is very time consuming to actually do that watching of the video to find something of interest. And so our goal is to try to move the user or the human upstream from that raw data collection. And we want to replace them with AI. That's the notion. And I apologize, it's having a hard time figuring out which way to look. Yeah, so that's basically the spirit of what we're in the business of doing, the part of the organization that I represent, which is Teledyne Scientific. And Teledyne Scientific is basically a central research lab. It's what's known as a corporate R&D center. For many years, a lot of the very large companies had such a thing, a research lab, a center research lab. But that's not as common anymore. Most organizations are either very distributed or they're really organized around products, and the product teams do research, but they're basically very stovepipe to products. In my organization, we just do research broadly to any customer, any potential customer, and to any potential product line out of our the other business units. So we do a lot of work for the government, and in our government funding, we're basically seeding some of the new ideas, new technologies, creating new algorithms, maybe generating patents. And then we also do a lot of research jointly, either with our own business units like FLIR, or with other partners, whether it's commercial or academic partners, to solve specific problems. The research center, which is Teledyne Scientific, is currently split into 2 locations. The one on the left is, it says headquarters, and I'll explain that in a second, but it's about 2/3 of Teledyne Scientific, and then 1/3 is in North Carolina, which is where I sit. And the group in North Carolina is the Intelligence Systems Lab. The reason that says headquarters is because literally that campus is so beautiful. It's just north of Santa Monica on the hills, that when the CEO bought us in 2006, he said, we're moving our corporate offices there. So they moved in there. So they have a corner of the building on the left. So Teledyne Technologies is headquartered there, but also Teledyne Scientific has most of those facilities for our research and development. Okay, so the Intelligence Systems Lab, we are a group of about 35 researchers. I would say in our case, maybe 60% hold PhDs.
That's super try to get it.
Oh, it's a lot. Excellent. And all of us dedicated primarily research in 3 technical areas. And I'll start from the top right, what we call neurotechnology. And this is basically a really cool capability that we've been developing over the last almost 10 years, which is basically to leverage our understanding of the brain and brain mechanisms, not to model those mechanisms to create algorithms, which is also a good thing to do, but instead to know how to better do human-machine interfacing, which basically is brain-machine interfacing. So we are using electrodes mounted to the head, like this prototype band or this one right here, to monitor brainwaves in the brain, and basically use that information for the computer systems to make decisions of that optimize their interaction with the user. We also have used the technology to close the loop as we decode brainwaves in the brain, and those brainwaves are associated with potentially things that we want to overcome, like confusion or lack of sleep. We can actually see electrical signals to redirect the brain, and we have shown that we can actually improve memory consolidation, so learning, and we can improve sleep. In our most recent research, we are showing that we can counter insomnia. We are about to publish the paper, so I don't have anything yet on that, but that's extremely exciting. We may have a drug-free treatment for insomnia, which will revolutionize that entire field. So that's a pretty exciting area. In fact, you were talking about DARPA programs. That all started from one DARPA project that I began in, I think, 2008. I think that program started, and it has grown into a pretty exciting part of our organization. On the bottom right, the technical area is really sensor exploitation. So while it says image processing and machine learning, those are two techniques that we do use, but we use a bunch of different techniques to try to get information out of raw data. That's really the bottom line. And there are some examples there that I'll potentially show you later on if we don't run out of time. But we are also now very focused on very applied work. So you will see in the bullet points, we have worked on lifelong learning, and this is something that we did together to advance the state of the art of machine learning. And so really at the very more fundamental research, but also within that area, we're trying to put these out, a lot of the algorithms on embedded hardware, like those ASICs that are applying on the James Webb Telescope, right? Very applied. How do we actually get an algorithm that's that complex to fit in this hardware and still give you relevant information? So very, very cool stuff that we do in that area. And then on the left, we started in 2006, involved in DARPA's Grand Challenge. And you guys are all too young to have heard of that one, but it was actually a competition that DARPA put together where mostly universities from around the country submitted their vehicles, autonomous vehicles, to compete and traverse 100 miles across the desert in California. And we were, there were 4 finishers, and we were one of those 4 finishers. That vehicle is not shown there. It was a massive vehicle. We worked with a company called Oshkosh. They build military vehicles. You may see them. Yeah, they're probably here on base. But the goal of our involvement was, 1, to provide the autonomy for that vehicle, and 2, to do it in a vehicle that, if we were successful, could be sent out to be used in the field. And so for us, even though we were not first place, we succeeded because very soon after, our algorithms were embedded in one of the systems that launched as part of the Cargo UGV was the project that the Army sponsored. And basically in that project, we demonstrated that we could have a manned vehicle that autonomous vehicles would follow. And so we could basically have a huge number of vehicles completely unmanned, carrying cargo through muddy terrain and through forests. So that has been one of our very exciting accomplishments, that we took what was a very academic oriented experiment in these vehicles, and we actually put them in the field. That technology was also used in DARPA's Urban Challenge. And the Urban Challenge, the way things change is that instead of traversing through the desert, we actually had to traverse streets following California highway rules of the road. So stop at stop signs and wait for your turn to go, pass only when you can pass, where it's legal to pass and things like that. And so we demonstrated that that huge vehicle, the yellow one on the left, could do that. So it's taller than this. I think it was 11 feet tall. So a massive vehicle, and all the other teams were very intimidated. And so what happened, we made it to the finals, and in one of those runs, our vehicle was getting too close to another vehicle, and DARPA hit the emergency brake on it because they're riding behind it, for safety. And they hit the brake, and that shut down our system, and we could not recover. So we didn't actually finish, but the system was able to successfully follow all those rules. So we drove the autonomy on that vehicle. We then moved it to that HDT protector. That's actually a vehicle that is about yay high, that is designed to help soldiers carry their loads, and maybe backpacks or auxiliary material or equipment. And it basically follows a designated soldier. And we wrote all of the autonomy and the sensor exploitation software for it. And then the last thing I'll say, I'm spending a lot of time on this slide, is that fixed wing drone is one that we actually created. It's the first of its kind. We developed this about 5 years ago now. But it's a drone that can fly, but then dive into the water, swim, and then come back out. And so that's what you see in the image there on the middle here under it. That's actually coming out of the water. It can dive pretty deep, but right now we have it rated to about 15 meters, because there's a limit to, that the more you want to protect it from the pressure, the heavier it is going to be, and so it's going to, battery life is going to just not make it a relevant system here.
You also were mentioning before that a lot of the customers, they want sort of intelligence gathering from all the sensors, including on all the platforms, not just the autonomy. So how much of the focus of even your lab is online versus offline intelligence? And it seems like online, it's mainly for the purposes of autonomy. I guess it's two questions, which is more of your focus, and then also, do you do any intelligence gathering beyond autonomous navigation? Is that a focus of?
Yeah, we do. But now those two things are actually beginning to merge. It's now hard to separate. But let me start with your original question. We primarily do online, but there are a lot of customers who need analysis in what you would call offline mode. So they may be gathering a lot of data and then comparing across all aircraft. They want to see some pattern. Is this specific engine causing us problems? And so we also solve problems like that. Unfortunately, that slide is not letting me really do justice to what we're going to do. But we do a lot of work offline for complex problems. But what I'm showing you here is that what you see on the lower right is exploiting available sensors to derive information. And potentially that information is being down to a ground station, if the data is being collected from a drone. But it could be that you have a head-up display, right? So the soldier might be carrying cameras on their helmet, and at night we're able to gather enough information to give them a sense for where threats might be, or I don't know, if you're driving, we're able to detect and recognize the speed limit signs. So we might display that on your head-up display. So it is not for autonomy. We're doing it in real time, online, but we're doing it to display information in real time that drives displays for human consumption. But we're also seeing a convergence in that the more sophisticated we're making our sensor exploitation methods, so that we are gathering more relevant information, we're finding that the autonomous systems benefit from that higher level of abstraction information. So a drone initially, or today, a drone flies from waypoint to waypoint, because you actually drew on a map the waypoints that it should follow. And then once it reaches the last waypoint, it flies back home. But now that we can actually do more intelligent stuff online, it might be flying towards a waypoint, but it detects something of relevance, like a lost child in the woods. It will stop trying to reach that waypoint and fly back and maybe orbit that child to get, or that suspected child, to get confirmation, and maybe now alert back to the rescue team, right? So we are using the online with the capabilities for sensor exploitation to increase the sophistication of the time. Okay, so that's basically the punchline, that we are developing and leveraging state-of-the-art AI algorithms and architectures to turn raw data into actionable information. That's it. It's a term that people are using now, but it's basically useful information that helps you make decisions or take actions. So that's why the actionable part of it. So now this is the point where I'm just going to.
I think there's a question on the Zoom.
Oh, okay.
So Leonardo, go ahead, unmute. You can ask your question.
Hi, Mario. It's just a quick question. So you mentioned a lot about gathering data from different sensors, right? So I was kind of curious, do you deal more with like a federated learning approach, or is more like centralized, or both?
Yeah, cool. We do not discriminate. So we are trying to solve problems, and there are specific applications where we have used federated learning, because we're deploying multiple systems. So when we do have drones flying missions, each drone is experiencing very different conditions and data, and they have been used to that data has been used to train their own onboard models. We then collect the learned patterns from all these various drones to bring them all together into the knowledge base that the federated system has basically captured. So we do that, but the infrastructure to support that is relatively massive. You need very sophisticated drones with very sophisticated processing. So in all honesty, while the capability is there on the algorithm side, the hardware is not there to support it. So we did this mostly as a proof of concept. Most of what is happening is more centralized. Data is gathered, and then in a centralized fashion, we may train models that benefit from all that gathered data.
So you did do a prototype, but with hardware that was scarce or too expensive, or
Yeah, so we knew that we could fly for 15 minutes. So our experiment was very short, but we flew multiple drones with fairly sophisticated processing on board and cameras. And so on board, they were training, and then they had sufficient bandwidth of communication to share what they were learning, so that the others benefited from, as they encounter, basically what we were doing is encountering new vehicles that were flying around and detecting vehicles, but it was new types of vehicles. So maybe they had never learned a pickup truck, and we put a pickup truck in the field of view. So they learned that pickup truck, they share that with the other vehicles, and we show how now the other vehicles could recognize pickup trucks. Even though they had never seen pickup trucks, it was the one drone that did get exposed to pickup truck. So, but it was 15-minute shifts that we had, and so that's not realistic. Most people want to be out there doing 40, 60-minute missions, and that drives the batteries to mostly support the motors and very minimal data recording, so that we can do that centralized manner. Did that answer your question, Leonardo?
Yes, thank you.
So now I transition to this phase of the presentation where I'm flashing different capabilities that we're using to do sensor exploitation and support autonomy in some way. This is a technique that we have a patent on to do image fusion. So what you're seeing here are 3 images. The one on the left is the color camera. It's an image taken at night. So as you can imagine, it has a very hard time seeing things. But there's a lot of artificial light, so you can see the lines of the road and maybe the do not turn left sign, the traffic lights, but not much else. The one in the middle is a thermal infrared camera, and there now you can see that there are people standing there in the corner, and then there's trees, palm trees that you couldn't see in the color image, right? So there's tremendous complementarity between these 2 cameras. Even though you might have thought that the visible was not useful, it is letting us know that there's a red light that we should stop. The thermal infrared has no idea what color the light is. And we cannot see the traffic sign, the left, no left turn sign right there, right? So we developed this algorithm that allows us to fuse all the information into a single image. This can be used for human consumption. So instead of presenting 2 images on the screen for the driver to be looking back and forth like, oh, is there anyone there? We present a single image that gives them all that information. That's one way of using it. The other way of using it is basically let me jump ahead, is basically to improve the accuracy of machine learning algorithms. Because the thermal infrared and the visible are complementary, we actually find them that they help us better define the objects and separate them from the background. In other words, we can derive better shape extraction from a fused image relative to, in this case, a visible image. In this example, I took a pre-trained model for autonomous driving that was trained on daytime imagery. It works great. It's like 86% accuracy in classified objects. And when we exposed it to the nighttime imagery, its performance dropped drastically to 68%. What I did instead is I changed nothing about the machine learning model, so I did not retrain it, but instead I fed it these fused images, and I recovered performance, or I got very close to recovering performance. I got it up to 81%. So the same fusion image is now being used as the input to an autonomous system that is doing object recognition.
Sure. So yeah, that was answering my first question, was what was the uses of the fusion. But is there as much of a push also for ultimately having 4-channel training new models with the long wave infrared, or is the focus more on the going towards the fused imagery for the sake of, like, because there's the dual use? Or
Exactly. So in this case is for assisted driving technology. And so we want to drive a display, but we also want to drive physicians to call out pedestrian, maybe engage the emergency braking system. So in this case, it makes sense to take advantage of fusion, but it is in fact relevant to train your models with the various modalities if they are available for training. The problem is that training data in other bands is more scarce, right? The visible tons of images, millions of images out there, but thermal infrared you don't. So that is the challenge, but if it's available, we have seen huge benefits from combining them during training.
Yeah, I was just curious in regard to the fusion. So is that leveraging something more complicated or sophisticated than just common filter-based fusion algorithms, or are those common filter-based?
No, they're not. So that's a good example of a deep dive that I'm happy to engage in. But I can also follow up. This is a patented algorithm that is basically an excellent example of a bio-inspired algorithm. I basically could walk you through how the circuitry in a retina and into the thalamus. How much do you know about the organization of the eye? Cones, rods? Yeah. So the cones are detecting light that we associate, the information that we associate with color, because cones are tuned to 3 different spectral bands. Not exactly light, but you can think of them as RGB. So there's a red cone, a green cone, and a blue cone. And it is through the circuitry in the retina that we are basically, well, there's a lot of really cool properties. But one of the things that we're doing is combining the signal from those cones to give us our perception of color. And so this fusion algorithm is doing that. And it does that, and it's important that it does that because what is happening is that at every pixel, it is computing an optimal way in between, in this case, thermal and color, to decide which band dominates at that pixel. So it's locally adaptive, and that's really important. There are many fusion methods out there, but they have a really hard time striking a really good balance of being local, but then not destroying the appearance of the image, and being global to maintain the appearance, but now not being as effective at exploiting the complementarities of the band.
Yeah, no, that's definitely relatable. That resonates with me. With my last months, at Boeing, I was in charge of the air refueling autonomous system, and we were having that challenge, right? So we were looking into algorithms to use all these different, right? Images that we were having. It was a huge challenge. I did look into some bio-inspired approaches, and made the framework, into how that implementation would be. But there were certain challenges as far as maybe how people go in leveraging that bio inspiration from the vision stream, right? I'm pretty sure at the design phase of your algorithm, you probably also had to make considerations into how deep into the vision stream you could go to, get that inspiration. Performing a fusion, and Coleman filter based, algorithmic approaches when just cutting in. That is still a research space, for organization. But at least there was a theoretical framework, by the time I was there. So, what you described definitely resonates with me.
Yeah, it is very challenging, for sure. The other use that we have seen really pay off for us in the fusion, because we're talking about and this might be what you guys were trying to do. We're talking about whether it's for human consumption or for autonomy. It is also fantastic for reducing bandwidth requirements for transmission. So if you have two cameras that both need to be down their data versus one, what we have found is that the algorithm can also be tuned so that we achieve maximum compression. So you were asking about how far we're going to model the visual stream. In that scenario, we actually try to take it so that it is compatible with human perception, so that compression is maximally effective. But that's another step that is not in this version of the algorithm. But we have matched it to the JPEG 2000. I don't know if you guys use JPEG 2000, but we actually have matched it to the JPEG 2000 compression algorithm. So we have a version of it that does simultaneous fusion and compression.
Do you have a publication to that?
Yeah.
Definitely love to see.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay, and here's another example. Just highlight that in this case, it is daytime, and you would assume a color camera is good enough for daytime. But if you're trying to fly a drone through that street, you cannot see the power lines in the visible, right, in the color camera. So the fusion on the right is combining all that critical information. So you never know where the information is coming from. It's very relevant to have these more intelligent algorithms analyze the data to produce relevant information. Because actionable information is actionable information for the drone to navigate around those power lines. This is a really cool example. This image was collected with 5 sensors. But really the first 3 are monochromatic, tuned to very close to red, green, and blue. So you can combine those 3 and get this color image. The other two cameras were shortwave infrared cameras. And so what I'm about to show you is taking all 5. So the algorithm doesn't work on just 2. You can take multiple bands and create a single image. And this is the image that it produces. And I don't know if you can tell, this contrast is not great, but there are 3 blue objects that popped up. Right there, these are blue. Those are camouflage trucks that were hard to see here. But they have popped up in blue. And that's because the algorithm has found this contrast or this complementarity, but because basically in the shortwave infrared, that's what the camera looks like. So if you were in the loop and looking at these images, and you knew this, you probably would switch to the shortwave, but then switch back to the color so that you knew where you were. Right. This algorithm is constantly recomputing everything so that it produces an image with maximum temperature. Okay, so I cover this one. Let me, so this is just a demonstration of the significant increase in its ability to detect and recognize objects. Right there, you can see that most traffic lights are not being picked up. We have also developed, and these are examples of how we do sensor exploitation for the purposes of autonomy. In this scenario, the need was a drone that could fly at high speed through urban environments. And potentially, it was really a toy example because I don't really know the future of package delivery, and Amazon is leading that. So, but it was a toy scenario that we were given to deliver packages to the front door of a building. And so what you see on the top right is we train an algorithm to recognize windows and doors. That's an extremely challenging problem because there are not two windows alike on that, except for in the same building, right? Or in a subdivision, a planned subdivision. But most urban cities, there's a huge variety of doors and windows. The algorithm successfully recognized windows and doors. And then on the bottom, we also trained it to detect power lines, because obviously that's a huge threat for drones. And we can do this, at the end of this project, we can do this in real time. So this was running on a drone, but the experiment is too dangerous to do in urban environments. I don't know if you guys do any drone experiments, but it's really hard to get permits. And it's almost impossible. You actually have to have a very controlled environment. So we couldn't actually do this in the real world. So what we instead did is implemented it AirSim. You guys use AirSim? So what you're seeing here is the image of the large image is the drone flying down the street, and then the inset image is showing you the detection of power lines. And then I don't know if you can see there are red circles popping up every once in a while. This is where we're having the laser range finder ping at those locations. So where we're detecting, the machine vision algorithm is detecting the power lines, then we are closing the loop and having the laser range finder ping them, give us distance, and then you can see that now the drone is planning its maneuvers to avoid those obstacles. And this was implemented in real time. I'm saying laser rangefinder, but there's actually much cooler technology that we developed, so that's why it's called LiDAR. We have a LiDAR that is based on MEMS technology, and so it's extremely compact. There are no mechanisms in it. It's all optical, and we can. It's a random access LiDAR system, so we can actually point it to specific locations around the vehicle. And so instead of generating these huge point clouds like all LiDARs do, we're just generating points to wherever the AI system directs it to generate these pings. Okay, we have also deployed these algorithms for fixed wing airplanes or drones that are flying autonomous missions. This image on the top left is showing you another example of color and thermal infrared. And once again, the fused image. And I apologize, these images are very small, but there is a vehicle here that was hard to see I forget which of the bands, but it's popping up. And so that's why this got highlighted here. One really cool thing that you can do with thermal infrared is you also can analyze water streams. And so that information is actually there in the fuse because it was present in the thermal infrared. But because it is a fixed wing drone, that is even more difficult to watch. This thing is flying at 5 kilometers per hour, relatively low. And so the video is just going like this, it's sweeping by like crazy. It's very hard to tell where it is, and to orient yourselves. And so what we have done is introduce AI algorithms to do onboard stabilization and mosaicing. And so what we are doing is instead of beaming down video at 30 frames per second, we're sending you these larger mosaics once per second that are basically just updating to give you a more stable image, right? Because it is wider field of view, wider field of regard, you have much better means of orienting yourself and understanding where it is looking. Oh, there's a lake there. Also, it's pointed that way, etc. And we can also tap straight into the onboard GPS, the nav data, and we can geo-register those mosaics onto the Earth. So we can paint these things on Google Earth, for instance, and drive that type of display. So instead of a video again, you're seeing a map getting populated with the current image from the vantage point of the drone.
So quick question.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. So is 1 second frequency about maybe the optimal stable frequency that you define in terms of sending the signals over, or is there a different reason behind that?
The initial reason was other than that, in that we know the speed of the drone and how much area it's covering, and so with 1 second it was providing us adequate stability. But that actually, to your point, that actually needs to also be an adaptive process. So if it slows down, it would change the rate. It doesn't have to be as fast. If it were to accelerate, but this one doesn't, because it runs out of battery, it does, then you would want to speed it up.
So for now, it's hard coded to 1 second.
In that experiment, it was hard coded, yes. Okay, yeah, good question. Another thing that we're doing for sensor exploitation, this one is primarily for autonomy, is to provide the autonomous vehicle with a vision-based sense of the depth in its path. It's just depth estimation, and it's called monodepth because we're taking a single image and using machine learning algorithms to infer the depth to every pixel on that scene. These algorithms are actually quite expensive computationally. So what we had to do here is actually create two streams. One is a faster algorithm that has an ability to run at frame rate, so 30 frames per second, but it produces a subpar depth estimation, so it's not as accurate, and you can see there's a blobby vehicle.
A question about this just came in the chat from Paul Werbos. Hi, Paul. Do you want to say your question, or I can read it to him?
Fine. Yeah, no, I'm very impressed by what I've heard. This is a great presentation. But I found myself saying, I really would like to send this and more information in this direction to a member of my family who is working for Cruise, developing the system using things like LiDAR to navigate. And it's clear that you're talking about something relevant to them, and they should be evaluating how useful it might be.
Try your daughter?
Actually, well, I have two daughters.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And until a few months ago, one daughter, she was working for Waymo, and her husband was working for Cruise. And that was a very interesting discussion, but she is currently retired for various reasons. And so he's basically full-time interacting with his colleagues at Cruise.
Cool. So yes, so it is a really good insight. One of the reasons you want to avoid LiDAR is because you're collecting so much data that it can actually be quite overwhelming to most processors. A vehicle, a car, can carry a pretty hefty computer. So for autonomous vehicles, it is feasible to do it, but it is quite expensive to put a computer there. And vehicle manufacturers are trying to drive costs way down for everything that you add to it. So even though you could carry a powerful enough computer, if you work for any of those companies, they're not going to accept a $5,000 computer just to be able to do processing of the LiDAR. These algorithms we can run on, the small NVIDIA chip, TX2s, NVIDIA TX2s. I don't know if you guys have started working with the RP5, the Qualcomm RP5. That's a fantastic new chip. So we can do that. What I was doing with this presentation is kind of give you a little more insights into what we're doing and how we're doing it. I didn't want to make it like a product presentation, like a salesman. But now what I'm hoping is you guys can, and Paul, you guys can go to the website and you'll see that under Teledyne Clear, we actually have an ADAS system. So automatic driver assistance system is what ADAS stands for. And we are marketing this to all those companies, even Ford, GM, all those big manufacturers are very interested in the technology that we're developing. And if you can eliminate LiDAR and costs go way down, they're definitely gonna be very happy. So that's one of the reasons we're doing this monodeck, because with the same camera that they're using to recognize traffic signs and pedestrians, we can also give them that to objects.
By the way, just as an aside, Paul, Mario's giving me a ride to the airport tonight, and I'm hopping on a plane to DC.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so maybe we can connect up.
Sure. Well, we're in a neighborhood where we could actually see each other in person. That would be kind of neat.
Great, great.
Okay, so
I probably should have said, the self-driving car area, obviously I have a lot of input on that, and it's obviously very interesting. I was really more interested in what you were saying about observing the sky, which is what I put a lot of time in lately. I've been working with a group of people connected to the Secretary General of the United Nations. And they just had a major meeting of the Security Council addressing the future of the big AI agency that the UN wants to set up. And there's a lot of debate on what they're allowed to do, what they can do. But the members of the Security Council all agreed, it's on television and video, that what they want most, if the UN does build this new agency, what they really want is better technology open to the world so that countries get warning for when they're being attacked from the sky. And the feeling is if everybody knew when they're being attacked and from where, it would reduce the chance of confusion and war. And all the big nuclear powers really want it. But the question is, where can they find that technology? And I hope we might find a way to discuss that, because there's a big need and it hasn't been provided by anyone yet. And that's a subject we might talk about if there's an opportunity.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's very interesting. We actually do work in that area. Unfortunately, a lot of the work is classified. But Teledyne Brown, part of the engineering systems branch of our company, they do a lot of work with low orbit satellite cluster arrays.
Are they still in Huntsville?
Yeah, they are.
That was my first encounter with Teledyne. They invited me to give an invited paper at one of the SPIE conferences when I was still a grad student.
Yeah, they're still there. They're very successful. And as I said, they're running the space station maintenance program, and they have these huge programs defense, missile defense. There's a lot of work there, both on missile defense that might be relevant to chat about.
Yes.
Okay, so I did notice that I'm over the time, so.
Oh, we are a little bit over. So, yeah, did you have some other slides you want to make sure to hit?
Let me show you this very cool video. This was going to give you a sense for how we're also pushing the state of the art. So we have our own machine learning algorithm. And I wanted to show you this table. So we did some analysis and compared it to a bunch of other object detectors at the time state of the art. So this was like 3 years ago. State of the art based on basically algorithms that we can put on embedded hardware. There are much more sophisticated algorithms, like the Tectron 2, for instance, but it's extremely expensive. It's computationally very expensive. So apples to apples, our algorithm can achieve extremely high frame rate with very high accuracy compared to the state of the art. So we're also innovating in that space. Here's an example. These are technologies that are being used for that data system. We're recognizing vehicles and obviously other potential threats on the road. This is the video that this is looking up at the sky, but for drones. So we can detect and recognize drones, even though we have very few pixels on them. Rank them. Yeah. Yeah, we go to older makes, but let me go to this video that I did want to show you. This is pretty cool. These are the gimbals I have mentioned. So the gimbals have multiple sensors. And so I forgot who had asked me, but you had asked me. The algorithms that we train now, they do train with multiple spectral bands. Not just thermal, infrared, and visible. We train them with shortwave and anything that we have access to. We train them on. This gives us a lot more robustness to recognize these objects regardless of it.
It's over dependence on certain channels become a problem in that domain whenever you have.
No, so in our gimbals, only one camera is fed to the algorithm at a time. So what's happened is between modalities. I'm not sharing the audio because it's pretty obnoxious, but what I wanted to show you is some of the really cool stuff that we're doing to close the loop. So this drone can land on its own box on a vehicle that's traveling as fast as 50 kilometers per hour. So here the drone has cut up to the vehicle. And now you have it looks so smooth because we're slowed down. We have slowed down the video just so that you can appreciate what it's doing. It's able to land on moving vehicles, but also on rocking ships.
Oh, cool.
And we have also done this in the Arctic, so on large ships in the Arctic.
One of my first papers with Daniel Procra was Autolander on a ship. Yeah. Cool. It's reinforcement learning for auto landing on a ship.
Is that entirely autonomous or with?
Entirely autonomous. There's no human in the loop here. In fact, there's only one person that through the door, just for for an emergency. We did, this is a $40,000 drone, so we don't want to use the drone. So they can take over, but they really, if something goes wrong, they really won't be able to rescue it. We had those nets, hoping that it missed by a little bit, it would at least not fall into water. But as you can imagine, this was tested a lot on land before we went up to the ocean.
Where was that? It's beautiful.
There are multiple occasions where it was tested. So I've lost track of where all these locations are, but this is technology that is now a commercial product. So these various customers use that drone to do all these customers do use the drone to do surveys or data gathering in this pretty harsh conditions. So today, the drone is actually deployed, and it is being used to auto land and fast-moving ships, boats, and on vehicles. So yeah, it's everywhere in all oceans at this point. But those particular videos were during our testing. I don't remember the specific location. That pleasure boat. I don't remember the exact experiment. But a lot of the small boat experiments were done off the coast of Boston.
Cool.
Yeah, so that was the video that I thought would be. Any questions?
Anything recorded?
I didn't click record.
Can you share the slides that?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that way you'll see the ones that I didn't get to present.
Those the platforms are all in-house as well, right?
Yeah.
Kind of not to get too low level, but as I understand it, a lot of the autonomy is in giving flight instructions to a flight controller, the same types of instructions that an human operator would give. But is there any crossover for lower level control, autonomous control of the drone, or is the interface only on the kind of like waypointing?
Before you answer, just I want to say that anybody in the call who is a member of the ACIL or adjunct faculty, anybody who's in that status, please come back at noon if you can. Anyway, that's for ACIL members at noon. But anyway, go ahead and answer the question.
Sure, yeah. Or is the interface, the API, is that fixed, or is there any benefit, would you say, to lower level control, autonomous control?
There is definitely a benefit to lower level control. In fact, we do both. There's always a need, just like in the human brain, right? Like the midbrain, is always kicking on to avoid major catastrophe. We do have low level control, always being able to manage flight or decisions, especially for obstacle avoidance. But high level control we're finding is giving us that edge where our drones are becoming tools for a job, as opposed to a device that you buy that you have to train for months to use, and then requires a bunch of additional tools on the back end to process and analyze the data. Autonomy at a high level is giving users much more sophisticated product. So I don't know if that was too high level an answer.
No. That's a good level for the time. I thought it was just are there any use cases for customers for acrobatic drones, or is it mainly well, that's more what I was getting at with the lower level control, because there might be sophisticated flight instructions that require autonomy. So that's pushing the.
Yeah, so we have a really cool drone. You guys can look it up. It's called the Black Hawk. It's about that size, size. and it navigates through indoor environments. And it tries to do that very fast because, as you can imagine, its battery is not going to be very big. So it's flying very fast. It's not an acrobatic level control, but it is doing pretty sophisticated self-navigating, just having to establish mapping, because it's going into an indoor environment that we don't have a map for, hallways, doors, and things like that. So it's tracking all that, creating a map, doing it very fast, and coming out and providing potentially a 3D map layout of the building. So we are driving a lot of the autonomy at a very low level for that drone. It's in that case, it's coming back with a usable map of the indoor environment within 15 minutes. Yeah, you've seen the video. Yeah, I unfortunately did not draw a video.
So I do have a couple questions that aren't technical, but something that I thought would be useful information. Like first of all, the first question is, what does the function look like to deploy most of the systems, right? And the second question is, for military purposes, I would imagine, just based on my experience, I know that acceptability and certifiability of most of these AI systems is a challenge. And I think one of the features or elements that the military seeks is to provide evidence that there is a flexibility for human interface, right? So kind of what you're just describing, you're saying to go about being able to take over that system.
Yes.
What is that process for Teledyne look like, or what is being experienced as far as having certifiability or acceptability, or once you say AI technologies military?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. A lot to unpack, but I would say yes, trust in AI is really important. Also, ethical AI is really important, and the government and the military are, not struggling, but they are trying to figure it all out. So it hasn't been figured out. That's the main point there. We have, no, I don't have pictures of that flight. We have taken maybe a tangential approach where the AI is either being used to provide information to a human that then the human can make decisions upon. And so the AI is not making a final decision in that case. Or we're using it for autonomy to free up the user from having to do low level, or potentially lower level control. And that is finding very quick acceptance, because in fact that was a challenge for FLIR, that every drone required that the operator train for quite a bit, for many weeks. And then when they're flying it, they're basically hands-on flying the drone, not manually. They can use waypoints, but they have to monitor everything. And once we began to give them this more autonomy, acceptance went up. Instead of 1 for every 10 individuals, now they want 4 out of a squad may want to have 4 because they want to do rapid search. So in that case, that type of acceptance has been ameliorated or improved by introducing better autonomy. But autonomy that doesn't have catastrophic consequences. It's autonomy for a mission of reconnaissance or search and rescue.
But you haven't, deployed yet into some of those super critical missions, right? That might have, say, catastrophic impact or unexpected outcomes from the autonomous system.
We may or may not have. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
But I think that there's even when organizations are doing that, today, there is a process. In fact, there was a memorandum released in February of this year by the Department of Defense on the use of AI. You guys should read it. It does have consequences for all of us of how the military is thinking about using AI, and it also helps you understand how, at least from their perspective, ethical use of AI comes into play.
When was that released this summer?
In February of this year. I can share that. Memo.
Oh, yeah, that sounds very interesting.
It's really important. And in fact, right now, it's by policy, all AI and all AI programs, like DARPA programs, have to abide by that memorandum. So it also has implications for how we, what kind of things we can propose to do in our research. If it's funded by DARPA.
That's kind of what I was referring to when I talked about it. I know that it has strict requirements on that. And anytime we hear anything regarding to AI, like it's like just hyper, it's just kind of
yes. So that memorandum, I have the way it was written, but on the other hand, it was their first attempt at saying, hey, we got to put something in place that everybody needs to be working towards. And so what they're saying is, in order for an AI system to be inserted into use, it will have to go through a certification accreditation process. What that process is not fully figured out, but at least there is movement in that direction. And part of it is trusting the AI and whether it's the accuracy or success rate, things like that.
That's interesting. I met with Jane Pinellas, who was in charge of AI assurance for all of DoD actually until March. So she must have had some input on that. I met her in April, soon after she went back to Johns Hopkins, which was an IPA in Teledyne for AI assurance. Yeah. Let's take a last question. I see Paul's hand up.
Yeah. This question of trust is certainly something I hope we in this group can discuss in great depth, because it is a very, very big issue, much bigger than most people realize. I have certainly monitored this UN process. I mentioned the Secretary General and the new agency. I probably should have mentioned that there was a huge conflict we have now, where there are Russians who don't want to be monitored. They don't want people to know when they're attacking them. And the politics are getting to be really hairy. But we can work on open technologies, and our relations with the Russians are part of the game. But trust is also a very, very big part of the game. There are people all over the world who are aiming at regulations following an old-fashioned legal model, which in my view doesn't work.
Absolutely right.
Yeah. One of the reasons why the old model doesn't work is that humans can be a problem. And we in this community know some important realities that need to be communicated to this policy world that they don't understand. One reality is the highest level of artificial intelligence. It's not just prediction and classification, it's also optimal decision. And Don, of all people, knows that. And I've done a lot of the development of where that technology came from. And we learned some things about conflict of interest. I remember in the earlier days, the first design I had for dual heuristic programming, the obvious design would not work. It would go unstable. I'm glad I was working with solid engineers, teaching me about theorems and what we needed to do. And it turns out there are ways to prevent gross instability in these kinds of systems, but they require certain kinds of information flow constraints. And my feeling is these apply to humans just as much as they do to computers. And how to design a system which doesn't just blow up. That's an important part of the expertise we need to somehow bring to the world.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah, I completely agree that's critical. And the point that you also made about the ineptitude of regulators to adopt old things that are not applicable. So, for example, the Altman from OpenAI has been trying to persuade Congress to require a license to do AI, and unfortunately, one of the senators who seems persuaded is a senator from Missouri who I voted for. But anyway, the problem with that is that you got people who control licensing who know a lot less than the people they're trying to regulate. So anyway, I would like to invite the members of the ACIL, including you, Paul, for the noon presentation by Leonardo. He's going to be looking at approaches for marrying adaptive resonance with gradient methods and some of the challenges in so doing. And he's made some interesting progress as part of what he'll discuss, but he's also discussing challenges and open questions that need to be addressed. We'll also have a quick around the room in the lab. So the noon meeting is just for lab members, please. And we'll give Mario a little break between now and then and come back at noon. And then the people who are on the Leonard Wood Institute project, John, Yuan, Yue, and Sasha, please stick around for that after the meeting. So a little bit after the lab meeting, please stick around because Teledyne's collaborating with us on that as well. So anyway.
I really want to join you guys, but I have a commitment with the Canadians coming up right now. I don't know how long that's going to last. We'll see how it goes.
Okie doke. Well, don't feel obligated to be spot on time. We'll welcome you anytime you can. And if you check your email a little deeper down the list, I sent one about the fact that I'm coming to town. So you can let me know if there's some possible opportunity to connect on. So
Great. Thanks so much.
thank you, Paul. Thanks for coming, and thank you, the rest of the audience too. Thank you all for coming. And Leonardo will see you in a separate link when the lab meeting starts in just under 30 minutes.
All right, sounds good.
Okay. Thank you, folks.
Yeah, you want a quick snack of some kind?
Thank you so much.